Welcome to Astro Weatherman. Welcome to another edition of Astro Weatherman, Summer 2023 edition. Whew, get ready for a wild one. You ready? It's going to be a ride for this summer, all over North America, from Canada, US, all the way down to Mexico. Well, I guess it's just a matter of being prepared, keeping your eyes on the sky, and yeah, there's going to be extremes everywhere, from extreme dryness and drought to extreme periods of localized flooding and heavy rain to extreme storm systems that'll be moving through, maybe even an early hurricane season. Yeah, so lots to talk about. So please stay tuned to find out wherever you are how the planets are going to be affecting your regions this summer. So it's going to be important to keep an eye on the sky and to, just make sure that you are able to connect with your local authorities should it be necessary. It's ain't gonna lie. It's gonna be a very interesting summer, no doubt. And I think a big part of it has to do with the transitions that are occurring in the South Pacific, particularly the phenomenons, meteorological phenomenons known as, I should say, oceanographic, which affects the meteorology phenomenons of what we call El Nino and La Nina. Now, these take place off the in the Pacific coast of South America, and we have been in an La Nina period for the past little while, which basically La Nina is where the South Pacific off the coast of South America, the ocean water currents, the ocean currents, they undergo a cooling effect, all right, which affects global weather patterns. Now, El Nino is the opposite of La Nina, and the El Nino is when the South Pacific, off the coast of South America, the ocean currents begin to warm and heat, which affects the weather patterns throughout the world. All right, and it has a very different effect. So, what does this mean? We are basically transitioning out of La Nina, where the South Pacific was undergoing a cooling pattern, and now it is started to heat up. So basically, what we have is a transition from La Nina to El Nino, and I think our weather patterns, as we are seeing them right now, are going to be a bit chaotic throughout the world because of this transition. And I want to show you as well, astrologically, how these patterns are taking effect. Okay, so basically, here we are off the coast of the of South America and the South Pacific area, this entire region here. So off the western coast of South America. And all of this area, the South Pacific, is where El Nino and La Nina happen. Okay. Now, La Nina is where the ocean roughly, all right, so roughly this entire region here is where the ocean begins to cool down. All right. And that cooling of the ocean affects the atmosphere, affects climate patterns throughout the world. Okay. And so that's where we were in the past few years. And now it's shifting. Okay. Now, La, La Nina and El Nino, their patterns can last anywhere from months to years. Okay, so it really varies. It's very highly variable. Now, El Nino is when the ocean heats up throughout this area. All right, it gets hotter. And so, as the ocean heats up, it's going to affect the atmosphere in a different way. And it creates a whole bunch of climatic shifts throughout the planet. All right. And so what we want to now study then is how is El Nino, because it's starting to form now. How do the planets look like when it comes to El Nino formation? And what we see are some very powerful heating planets affecting the South Pacific, primarily up here, this black line, Pluto, this pink line, Jupiter, this orange line, Sun, all affecting this, like literally right smack in the middle of the South Pacific. Astrologically, this means, at least for the summer period, anyways, El Nino is going to ramp itself up a lot. So we're going to see the South Pacific heat up a lot. And so we're going to see this transition between La Nina, which was ocean cooling, to ocean heating, which is going to completely shift the climate around the world. And every part of the world is going to experience a different type of effect. All right. So I think this is why in North America, what we're going to see in North America, because that's what we're studying right now, is this wild weather that's going to be happening everywhere in Canada, the US, and Mexico, because the shift from cooling ocean waters, La Nina, to ocean heating, El Nino, is going to be creating this. So the climate's going to be in this transitionary phase. So it's going to be quite chaotic in many areas, and it's going to break the rules in many areas. So we got to be on the ball. And then once it hits in, and once it settles into an El Nino period, which I think is going to last astrologically, if this is how it's beginning, which it's showing with Pluto, the intensifier, and the Sun and Jupiter, I think this is going to be a very powerful El Nino period that could last, you know, above its average time frame. And again, it varies. Sometimes it lasts months, sometimes it can last a year, sometimes more. So it just depends. So we're gonna that part we don't know just yet. All I know is that what the planets are showing, it's gonna probably be a fairly strong El Nino. So we're gonna have an interesting ride when it comes to weather over the next little while. We'll monitor it. We'll see how it's evolving. But stay tuned to this channel if you want to know more. All right, so let's get started with the local weather. When I mean local, I mean North America, Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Let's see what summer is going to bring, because it's going to be interesting. Okay, folks, let's get started here. And we're going to start off in Canada on the western side. So let's start off with BC and let's see what's going on for you guys for the summer. All right, so basically, you've got Pluto and the moon, and they are going to bring you very hot and above average temperatures. And the reason for this is because the moon is in Leo right now, and the moon will reflect any sign that it is in. And because Leo is a hot, dry, sunny sign, you can expect a lot of that energy, although the moon will still give its little bit of moisture. The thing is, in Leo, it can definitely bring thunderstorms and thunder showers, which might not be good because Pluto's influence is going to make things more severe. Pluto is a planetary amplifier. So what happens is it's going to amplify the energy of the moon and in Leo. So that means hot gets hotter, dry gets drier. So the danger for drought conditions is extreme, and that's not good, especially if you mix in lightning. So there is concern of forest fires in this area of Canada for the summer. So BC, I'm kind of concerned that way, especially with the moon in Leo, Leo being a fire sign, which can definitely propagate fires. Now, at the same time, Pluto's amplifying effect to the moon can also create heavy localized, intense rainfall in certain areas, which can actually lead to some flooding. So we could have fires and floods in some areas. So it's going to be a kind of a crazy summer that way, kind of a summer of extremes. So, but overall, what's going to dominate is the dryness and the heat. All right. In terms of Alberta, you guys, because you've got a three planetary combo happening, you've got Mars, you've got Venus, and you've got Moon and Leo. And so what's happening is that's because of Mars is going to amplify the heat. So there's going to be very, very, I think, hot summers coming up. Venus is also warm, and Moon and Leo is hot. So I think the temperatures for Alberta are going to be, very, very much above average. Now, Venus and Mars, when they pair up, though, they can bring thunder showers and thunderstorms. So I think it's going to be a very active season that way. Mars can also still bring fires. So the with the dryness, I think overall it is going to be drier than normal. So with the dryness and the heat and with rolling thunderstorms, with lightning, that might not be good for the fire situation as well. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but we have to call it like it is, right? Now, Saskatchewan, you're sort of in a similar position. I'm just going to move my face over here. You're in a bit of a similar position here as well. And what you have is Mars going right through the province, and that's going to bring up the heat, dryness, and with Venus down here, it's going to ramp up thunder showers and thunderstorms. So I think throughout Alberta, Saskatchewan, be prepared for that. And again, because Mars is a very fiery planet and lightning, not a good mix. So that can definitely propagate thunderstorms. So just be aware of that. I hope not, but it's going to be, I think, a hot, dry summer overall throughout Western Canada with rolling thunderstorms, and that can create, again, that could instigate fires with all the dryness. So not looking great that way. All right, I'm going to move my face back here again, and let's move to Eastern Canada. Okay, we're going to start off here with Manitoba. And Manitoba, you're under the influence of both Jupiter and Uranus. And that is going to moderate the temperature. So we're going to have more seasonable temperatures. So it's not going to be too hot. It's not going to be too cold. You're going to have your hot days, no doubt. But what will cool things off a lot, unfortunately, with Uranus are storms. Very unpredictable, very highly changeable weather systems, and a lot of atmospheric instability. So just be aware that it's going to be a roller coaster summer with some pretty intense storms, with periods of heat. And but overall, I think it'll be more mild and seasonable. Definitely a lot cooler than the western parts of Canada. All right, and then Ontario, you're in a similar pattern between Uranus and Saturn. All right, that's going to moderate the temperatures. Uranus is going to bring the temperatures down a little bit. Saturn wants to heat it up, so it kind of balances each other out that way. So yeah, I think it'll be a nice, mild, seasonable summer. And sometimes it might actually be a bit cool. So it might be cooler than normal. That you'll definitely have those times. And both Uranus and Saturn love to bring instability to the atmosphere, so that's going to bring thunderstorms. So there's going to be some, and maybe some whoppers, some really strong storms. Because when Saturn and Uranus get together in astrology, these planets are called malefic. In other words, they don't they can bring a great deal of challenge and difficulty, especially to the atmosphere. So it's going to be a roller coaster that way as well. So watch for some intense storm systems that will roll through in a seasonable, and I think overall it will be drier as well in terms of moisture. Both Manitoba and Ontario, you're both going to be very dry. So there's not the moisture that does fall is going to be very localized and it would be heavy. So this is where we could have extreme dryness, drought-like conditions with even localized flooding events are possible. So it's going to be a wacky summer, I think, throughout North America, as you'll see as we move down to the States as well. And it's going to be everywhere. This is going to be a very interesting summer indeed. All right. And then as we move to Quebec, we're going to see um, Saturn. And it's going to be sandwiched in between Saturn right here and actually Mercury, which is right over here, far off to the east, just on the Atlantic, off the Atlantic coast. And so what's going to happen here is the Saturn is hot and dry, Mercury is dry and cool, but Saturn is going to dominate. So we're going to see the temperatures overall throughout Quebec and the Maritimes be very hot, above average. And unfortunately, it is going to be drier than normal. So I think most of Canada is looking at a very dry summer uh, overall. All right, with the exception of very strong localized thunderstorms. These will all bring a lot of instability to the atmosphere, and these localized thunderstorms can create some danger of, flash flooding or, again, but it's highly localized. All right, so which may not help to the overall dry conditions or drought-like conditions even are possible. And again, with the lightning, there can be the risk of fires throughout most of Canada, actually. And so it's not looking promising. Mercury adds wind to the mix. So there could be some strong wind storms that could hit the Maritimes. And we're going to talk about maybe having an early hurricane season. So that's something that we cannot dismiss. All right. And so I am kind of concerned when Mercury's around. Mercury governs over wind. Saturn can bring the low pressure associated with that and the heat, and to mix the heat with the low pressure and wind. Oh, that could be ripe for either tropical storm systems or even hurricanes, but I hope not. It could just be that there's going to be localized thunderstorms, but do expect some fairly strong windy days in Quebec and in the Maritimes. All right, so that's it. So let's get on to the USA. Okay, USA, we're going to see what is happening with your summer weather, and it just looks like a season of extremes. Like, seriously, what is going on? So, the West Coast, we've got temperatures to be actually moderate to seasonable. They're not going to be too hot, not going to be too cold. So, the temperatures should be nice, but there is the possibility of many cloudy days, lots of rain, showers, and possibly even flooding. Like, that's because of Pluto and Neptune. And, Neptune has this effect of being a very moist, wet planet. So, what happens is it brings fog, mists, haze. So, you can have a lot of those types of days, but it also can bring rain, showers, mist, and sometimes it can be heavy, especially when it's associated with Pluto, because Pluto is a planet that intensifies anything that it interacts with, right? So it's going to intensify Neptune. So it's going to be a very, it's indicating that could be a very challenging season that way. And then as we move further west in this corridor between the moon, which is right here, the gray line, and Pluto, the moon is going to be in Leo, which is going to bring a lot of heat. So we see the heat rise in this area. It's going to be very, very hot and dry. All right. Now, the only reason we put thunderstorms in this area is because the moon is still going to have some moisture associated with it. But in Leo, it brings a lot of energy to the atmosphere, and then it can bring electrification. With the heat brings energy, and with moisture, it can lead to thunderstorms. So localized, isolated thunderstorms, and there could even be the propensity with lightning. You don't want it. You don't want to have lightning when it's dry. That can breed forest fires, especially with Leo being in a fire sign. So this is something to be very cautious about over here, with the potential for localized heavy thunderstorms or thunder showers, which could actually bring some flooding to localized, very localized regions or areas, which is going to be a bit of a crazy season. Forest fires and flooding or thunderstorms. It's going to be, but overall, it's supposed to be a very dry season overall. And again, any rain that does come should be very localized, but when it does, it's going to be heavy. And then, this entire corridor, well, it's not even a corridor, basically all the way from Montana, going all the way to basically North Dakota, going down all the way to Texas, this entire region over here are actually supposed to have fairly pleasant weather, pleasant per se, because it's going to be hot. Um, the temperatures are going to rise because of Jupiter and Mars. There's going to be very hot, Jupiter being the dominant planet. Now, Venus is going to help moderate the temperature a little bit, so it will bring some scattered showers or rain to help bring some temporary relief here and there. But overall, I think it's going to be a much, very dry season. And it's going to be very hot. So in these areas. So just be aware of that. Now, sometimes when Jupiter interacts with Venus, like right here in Texas, there is a possibility for heavy rain that can happen from time to time occasionally. That's maybe because the ground is going to be so dry when rain does come in any force, it's going to not going to allow the water to absorb into the soil as efficiently, and then you could have, you know, localized flooding. So that can happen. So just be aware of that. Summer of extremes, man. Okay. Now in this area, again from North Dakota, Minnesota, all the way down to the Gulf states, we're going to see the temperatures start to cool off a little bit. Overall, it's going to be moderate. You're going to have your very hot days, absolutely, because of Mars, but Uranus is going to ensure that the overall temperatures are going to be more moderate, so seasonable temperatures. And Uranus and Mars, when they hook up, they love to party in the sky. So that's going to bring storms, and they could be powerful storms. So just be aware of that. You're going to have some beautiful, crystal clear, sunny days, and a whole bunch of variability. Overall, I think very dry, very localized storms that can hit and that can create some big challenges that way. There's a possibility with Uranus and Mars, even creating tornado activity to be quite strong throughout the summer season. So watch, you got to keep your eyes on the sky, folks. It's going to be crazy, both droughts and superstorms that can happen. So, wow. All right. And then as we get to the eastern areas, the eastern seaboard areas, we've got Uranus and Saturn. That is going to let me just move out of the way here quickly. That is going to keep the temperatures moderate, keep them seasonable. So not too bad. You're going to have your hot days because Saturn does like to bring some heat waves. All right. And then the temperature cools down because of storms. So storm systems that come by can cool off the atmosphere. So it's going to be a very unstable atmosphere. I think overall it's going to be drier than normal, still, but with very localized, strong storm fronts, and we have to be careful. I'm very curious about this Mars and Uranus connection here, because in the Gulf area, that is, they're notorious for bringing powerful storms and even things like hurricanes. So I really wonder if this is going to be an early hurricane season. If not, at least some very strong tropical storms that could brew. And in fact, the danger zone goes from Mars, Uranus, and Saturn. So this entire region is sort of in this danger zone of you got a lot of heat from Mars and Saturn, and that heat, um, along with the stormy potential of Uranus, Saturn, and Mars, can create or give a lot of energy to the atmosphere. And that could create some pretty powerful storm systems. I mean, best case scenario, you got a lot of scattered thunderstorms, thunder showers throughout the region. Worst case scenario, some powerful tropical storm or hurricane activity. So that, and that's for this entire, from the Gulf states all the way through the eastern U.S. seaboard. Yeah, that's something to be aware of. Now, in the upper northeastern U.S., okay, you've got Saturn and Mercury. And that's this line right out here in the Atlantic. And so this is going to bring very hot temperatures. You're going to have drier conditions with scattered storms as well. Again, this part here in the eastern seaboard, we've got milder conditions generally, even though you're going to have your heat waves. But the milder conditions, again, are going to come because of the passing storm systems. So it will moderate the temperatures. But man, oh man, um, this is just going to be one heck of a summer season. It's going to be interesting. Just everywhere is a bit of a mess from Canada down to the States. Well, now let's go to Mexico and see if they're any better. Okay, Mexico, let's see what's going on. All right, so basically, the majority of the western part of Mexico, especially along the coast, but most of through central, western Mexico, we're going to see the temperatures get really hot. It's going to be extremely hot, and we're going to see lots of potential for thunderstorm development and possibly even tropical storm development. And we're going to see why. One of the major players for this heat is going to be the combination of Pluto and the moon. All right, because moon is in Leo right now, and the moon reflects energy again of whatever sign it's in. And in Leo, it's hot and dry, so it's going to be very hot because um, Pluto magnifies and enhances whatever planet it interacts with. So that means you're going to have the magnifying effect of heat and dryness of the moon in Leo. But because the moon is still going to have some moisture to it, any rain that does fall is going to be very heavy, localized, and could cause localized flooding as well. Thunder and lightning, Leo, when combined with Pluto can and some humidity of the moon, it can bring some strong localized thunderstorms. So it's going to be a very interesting season of weather to be sure. And there is the concern of, again, early hurricane formation. So this is going to be, in the Pacific, this area of the world, anyways, they're called cyclones. And so what we want to look at is the one of the nicer regions, when we say nicer, is upper northeastern Mexico. Between Jupiter and the moon, we're going to see the temperatures still be extremely hot, very, very hot. I mean, I to the point where it's going to be actually dangerous. But the moon and Jupiter will also make it very, very dry. So I think, drought is a strong possibility. If there's any localized showers or rain, they'll be very sporadic. I don't even know if they're going to have any, but it's going to be very, very dry. And now the only concern here, and this especially down here towards where Acapulco, Mexico City is, when the moon and Jupiter hook up, that could bring severe flooding uh, periods. Now, this is going to be the weird part because overall, it's going to be drier and hotter than very, very hot and very, very dry. But when it does rain, it can be powerful rain. So there could be, to the point where there could be flooding. And Jupiter, um, when paired with that energy from the moon in Leo, it can bring hurricanes, cyclones, and tropical storms, these kinds of weather patterns. So it's going to be, Mexico is also going to have a wild summer of weather to be sure. Hot again in this region for where Mexico City is to the southern areas. And this is going to bring thunderstorms and heat towards the Yucatan Peninsula. You're going to see temperatures being more moderate. So it's going to be a bit cooler, but lots of stormy activity because of Uranus and Mars. Again, concern for early hurricane season, tropical storms. This is going to be a wild summer of weather. So Mexico is not spared, unfortunately. All right, that's Mexico. there you have it, folks. It's going to be a very interesting summer of weather. All right. Thank you all for watching. If you want to be a part of this channel, please hit the subscribe button. And if you liked the contents of this video or found them curious or interesting, then please hit the like button. All right. And if you would like to get notifications as to when future videos are coming out, hit the bell icon. All right. Thank you all for watching again. Take care.